Commander Hana stared at the data screens in front of her, her four eyes scanning through reports that made no sense. 20 years she had spent studying war. 20 years analyzing how different species fought, how they won, how they lost. She could predict battle outcomes with near-perfect accuracy. But humans? Humans were wrong. Everything about them was wrong. The observation station hummed quietly around her. It orbited a contested moon in the outer reaches, a neutral platform where the Galactic Council sent observers to document conflicts without interfering. Hana had been assigned here 3 weeks ago, and in that time, she had watched the human forces clash with her own people, the Valorian Empire, 5 separate times. The humans should have lost every single engagement. Their ships were slower. Their weapons had less range. Their armor was primitive compared to Valorian energy shields, yet they kept winning. Hana pulled up the casualty reports again. In the last ground battle, 40 Valorian shock troops had faced 18 human soldiers. The Valorians had superior positioning, advanced sensors that could detect movement through walls, and plasma weapons that could melt through steel. The humans had projectile rifles that used chemical propellants and metal bullets, technology that most species had abandoned thousands of years ago. The battle had lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 32 Valorians were dead. 3 humans had died. 3. She scrolled through the individual combat reports, looking for the pattern she knew had to be there. The Valorian deaths were spread across the entire battlefield, but the human deaths were clustered. 2 had died when a building collapsed from orbital bombardment. 1 had died from environmental exposure when his suit was damaged. None had died in direct combat with Valorian soldiers. How was that possible? The door to the observation deck slid open. Hana turned to see a young human male enter, wearing a simple gray uniform. He was small by Valorian standards, barely reaching her shoulder. His skin was smooth, his frame thin. He looked like he would break if she grabbed him too hard. "Commander Hana," he said, offering what humans called a smile. "I'm Corporal Doyan. I've been assigned as your liaison for the upcoming operation." Hana gestured for him to sit. She studied him carefully. His movements were economical, precise. His eyes were constantly moving, taking in the room, the equipment, the exits. Even relaxed, he seemed aware of everything around him. "I've been reviewing human combat performance," Hana said. "I don't understand your tactics. They seem inefficient, contradictory. Your doctrine emphasizes individual initiative, yet your soldiers move with perfect coordination. You use primitive weapons, yet you achieve precision that should require advanced targeting systems. Explain this to me." Doyan settled into the chair, folding his hands in his lap. "What would you like to know specifically? Why do you win?" The human was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We don't quit." Hana's crest flattened in frustration. "That's not an answer. Every species fights with determination. The Valorian shock troops are trained from childhood. They know no fear. They fight with honor and courage." "I'm sure they do," Doyan said. His voice was soft, almost apologetic. "But that's not the same thing as not quitting." Before Hana could press further, her communication panel chimed. A priority message from Valorian High Command. She opened it, read quickly, and felt her blood chill. A critical weapons facility on the moon below had been identified as a target for human special operations. Intelligence suggested an attack was imminent. The facility was defended by 60 elite Valorian soldiers, equipped with the best technology the Empire could provide. It had automated defense systems, overlapping sensor grids, and was built into a canyon system that provided natural protection. The message included a request. Hana was to observe the expected human assault and provide tactical analysis to help improve Valorian defensive doctrine. She turned to Doyan. "Are your people planning?" To attack the weapons facility in Sector 7? He met her gaze steadily. I can neither confirm nor deny operational details. The facility is impregnable, Hana said. Your soldiers will die if they attempt this. Maybe, Doyan said. He didn't seem concerned. 3 hours later, Hana's sensors detected a high-altitude insertion. 6 thermal signatures, descending rapidly through the thin atmosphere. No spacecraft. No drop pods. Just 6 humans in what appeared to be basic atmospheric entry suits, falling toward the moon's surface with nothing but parachutes to slow their descent. Hana tracked them on her screens. They landed in rough terrain, kilometers from the target facility. Her sensors showed them clearly for the first few minutes. 6 distinct heat signatures, moving in formation through rocky outcroppings. Then, one by one, they disappeared. Hana cycled through different sensor modes. Infrared, motion detection, electromagnetic scanning. Nothing. The humans had simply vanished. She expanded the search radius, thinking perhaps they had moved faster than expected. Still nothing. This is impossible, she muttered. My equipment can track heat signatures through solid rock. Where are they? Doyan, who had been sitting quietly beside her, spoke. You'll find them when they want to be found. That's not how sensors work, Hana snapped. They can't just disappear. Are they using some kind of cloaking technology? No, Doyan said. Nothing like that. Hana spent the next hour scanning the entire area around the facility. She found nothing. The Valorian defenders continued their normal patrol patterns, completely unaware of any threat. Their own sensors, which were of similar quality to Hana's, showed no signs of intrusion. She pulled up the human personnel files that had been provided to her. 6 soldiers. The team leader was a sergeant named Mino, age 28, with 7 years of combat experience. 2 were specialists in demolitions and engineering. 1 was a medic. 2 were designated as scouts, including a private named Jiwan, who was only 22 years old. None of them had any documented special abilities. No genetic enhancements. No cybernetic implants. They were just baseline humans, carrying basic equipment, somehow invisible to sensors that should easily detect them. Explain to me how they're doing this, Hana demanded. Doyan considered his answer. We evolved on a world with lots of predators. Big ones, fast ones, ones with claws and teeth. We survived by learning to hide. Learning to be patient. Learning to move when predators weren't looking and stay absolutely still when they were. You're saying they're using camouflage? Primitive concealment techniques against advanced sensors? I'm saying they understand that all technology has limits. Blind spots. And humans are very good at finding blind spots. 6 more hours passed. Hana watched the facility, watched the Valorian patrols, watched her sensors show nothing but empty terrain. She was beginning to wonder if the insertion had failed. If the humans had died on landing, and their bodies had somehow been scattered beyond sensor range, then, finally, something happened. A Valorian patrol of 8 soldiers entered a narrow canyon passage. Hana's sensors showed them clearly, their energy signatures bright and confident as they moved in standard formation. The canyon was a natural choke point, so they were being cautious, but not overly concerned. This was their territory, after all. They owned this moon. Hana watched the patrol advance. She was looking at the canyon walls, still trying to find the human soldiers she knew had to be there somewhere. Then, in the space of 3 heartbeats, 4 of the Valorian soldiers collapsed. No gunfire. No explosions. No energy discharge. Nothing on her sensors indicated any weapons fire at all. The 4 Valorians simply dropped to the ground and stopped moving. The remaining 4 soldiers immediately activated their shields and opened fire, their plasma rifles illuminating the canyon in bright blue bursts. They were shooting at shadows, at nothing Hana could see. Their fire control was panicked, undisciplined. 10 seconds later, all 8 Valorians were down. Hana's hands moved frantically across her controls, rewinding the footage, slowing it down, enhancing the image. She went frame by frame through those 3 seconds when the first 4 soldiers fell. And there, barely visible even in slow motion, she finally saw it. A human soldier had been standing against the canyon wall, not hiding behind cover, not crouching in shadows, simply standing completely motionless, pressed flat against the rock surface. His suit somehow matched the color and texture of the stone so perfectly that he was nearly invisible. As the patrol passed him, he moved 1 step forward. His arm extended. Something glinted in his hand. A knife. 1 quick stroke across the first soldier's neck, below the helmet line where armor was thinnest. The Valorian's hand went to his throat. The human was already moving to the second soldier. Another precise cut, this time behind the knee, severing the major artery there. The third soldier started to turn. The knife found the gap between his chest plate and back plate. The fourth soldier was opening his mouth to shout. The blade silenced him. 4 cuts. 4 dying soldiers. The whole sequence took less than 3 seconds. The motion was so economical, so perfectly efficient, that the other 4 soldiers didn't even realize they were under attack until half their squad was already bleeding out. Hana sat back in her chair, her breathing rapid. She had witnessed thousands of combat engagements. She had seen orbital bombardments that turned cities to glass. She had watched fleet battles where hundreds of ships fought for days. She had never seen anything as coldly precise as what she had just witnessed. "They're not fighting," she said quietly. "They're hunting." Beside her, Doyan said nothing. But when Hana looked at him, she saw something in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Or acknowledgement. On the screen, the human soldier had already disappeared again, melting back into the canyon walls as if he had never been there at all. The facility sprawled across the canyon system like a mechanical spider, its corridors and bunkers built into the rock itself. Hana had accessed the complete layout through her command clearance. She knew every entrance, every patrol route, every sensor placement. The Valorian defenders had created overlapping fields of fire and detection that should make infiltration impossible. Yet somewhere in that maze of stone and metal, 6 human soldiers were moving, or waiting, or doing whatever it was they did that made them invisible. Hana had expanded her sensor suite to maximum range. She had infrared tracking active, motion sensors calibrated to detect movements as small as a breath, electromagnetic scanners looking for any power signature that might indicate human equipment. The screens in front of her displayed a complete tactical picture of the facility and surrounding terrain. Nothing. For 6 hours, absolutely nothing. The Valorian patrols moved on their assigned routes. Guards stood at their posts. The facility commander, a veteran named Korath, ran periodic sensor sweeps. Everything appeared normal, quiet, safe. Hana felt her frustration building. She cycled through camera feeds, watched patrol after patrol pass through areas where the humans had to be hiding. How were they doing this? Her equipment was military grade, the best the Valorian Empire produced. She should be able to see them. Are they even still alive? She asked Doyan, who had remained at the observation station with her. "Your insertion was hours ago. I've seen no sign of them." "They're alive," Doyan said simply. He sat with his hands folded, watching the same screens, showing no concern at all. "How can you be certain?" "Because if they were dead, you'd have found the bodies by now." Hana turned back to her displays. She noted the positions of all Valorian forces. 42 soldiers inside the facility itself, 18 on external patrol routes. all well-armed, well-trained, alert for threats. The humans were outnumbered 10-1, in unfamiliar territory, with no support and no easy escape route. They should attack soon, Hannah thought. Every hour that passed increased the risk of discovery. Any competent commander would know that time was against them. Not another hour passed. Then another. The patrols continued. The facility operated on normal schedule. The humans remained invisible. Hannah was about to suggest that the mission had been aborted when movement caught her eye. Not human movement. A Valorian patrol, 8 soldiers strong, entering another section of the canyon system. This was a different route than the one where she had seen the first attack. The soldiers moved confidently, weapons ready but not raised, talking amongst themselves on their channel. She watched them advance down a narrow passage between 2 rock faces. The passage was perhaps 4 meters wide, with walls rising 10 meters on either side. Standard terrain for this moon. The patrol had walked this route 100 times before. Hannah checked her sensors. Nothing unusual. No heat signatures. No movement. No 4 soldiers dropped. This time Hannah was ready. She had multiple camera angles on the passage, multiple sensor modes active, recording at high speed. She watched it happen in real time and still barely saw it. 3 human soldiers had been there the entire time. Not hiding, not crouching, simply standing against the canyon walls, spaced 20 meters apart. Their suits matched the rocks so perfectly that even knowing they were there, Hannah had trouble distinguishing them from the stone itself. The Valorian patrol had walked right past them. The first human moved only when the patrol was between all 3 positions. 1 knife strike, quick and silent. Then the second. Then the third. Then the fourth. By the time the remaining soldiers realized what was happening, half their squad was down. The survivors tried to fight back. They activated shields, raised weapons, scanned for targets. But the humans were already gone, melted back into positions that the Valorian sensors couldn't detect. The soldiers fired at nothing, their plasma bolts scorching rock, but finding no flesh. Then, from different angles, the humans attacked again. Not with knives this time, with those primitive projectile weapons. Quick, controlled bursts of fire. 3 rounds per target. The bullets found gaps in the Valorian armor with precision that should have required computer targeting. But these were just humans, aiming manually, firing from positions that gave them perfect angles, while their targets had no clear shot in return. 10 seconds. That's how long it took for all 8 Valorian soldiers to die. Hannah rewound the footage again. She watched the first human soldier, the one who had struck the initial targets. He had been standing against the wall for the entire duration of the patrol's approach. She checked the time stamp. He had been in that position for over an hour, completely motionless, not even shifting his weight. How is that possible? Hannah asked. One of your soldiers has been standing in the same position for over an hour without moving. That should be physically impossible. Doyan glanced at the screen she was indicating. That's Jiwan. She's good at waiting. This is not normal. No species can maintain perfect stillness for that long. Humans can, Doyan said. It's something we evolved to do. We call it persistence hunting. Our ancestors would track prey for hours, sometimes days. They'd move when the prey moved, freeze when it looked back. Absolute stillness for as long as necessary. It's still in us. Hannah pulled up more data on human evolution. She had studied it before, but only superficially. Now she read more carefully. Humans came from a world with many large predators. They were not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most naturally armed. They had survived by being smart and patient, and by being able to run. The data indicated that humans had exceptional endurance. They could maintain pursuit for extraordinary distances, far longer than most prey animals. They would simply follow until their target collapsed from exhaustion. "You're endurance hunters," Hana said slowly. "Your whole species evolved to outlast your prey." "Yes," Doyon said. "We're not built for the quick kill. We're built for the inevitable kill." On the screen, the human soldiers had disappeared again. Hana checked all her sensors. Nothing. She noted the facility's defensive posture, still on normal alert. The commander hadn't noticed that 2 patrols had failed to check in. Or if he had, he was attributing it to equipment malfunction. Another hour passed. Hana watched the facility, watched the remaining patrols, watched for any sign of the humans. She found none. They had moved into new positions, or perhaps they were in the same positions. There was no way to tell Dot that she noticed something. A Valorian guard on the facility's outer perimeter. He was standing at his assigned post, monitoring his sensor display, following protocol exactly. But the sun was high now, the moon's surface heating up, and even with cooling systems in his armor, he was uncomfortable. She could see it in his posture, the slight shifting of weight, the way he angled his body to create a small shadow. He moved. Just 3 meters to the left, where a rock outcropping provided better shade. A small deviation from his assigned position. Barely noticeable. A human soldier rose from the ground behind him. Hana hadn't even seen her there. The soldier had been lying flat on the rocky surface, covered in what appeared to be native dirt and plants. At that distance, with that camouflage, she had been completely invisible. Not just to sensors, but to the naked eye. It was Ji-Wan, the same soldier who had been standing motionless for over an hour earlier. She had moved to a new position at some point, and Hana had never seen her do it. The Valorian guard had his back turned, focused on his sensor display. Ji-Wan moved in complete silence. One hand reached around to cover his mouth. The other hand held a knife that found the gap in his armor at the base of his skull. The guard stiffened, tried to struggle, but the human's grip was absolute. 15 seconds later, the Valorian went limp. Ji-Wan lowered the body carefully, making no sound. She dragged it behind the rocks, out of sight of the other guard positions. Then she stripped off his communication gear and settled into his position, standing exactly where he had been standing, from a distance. In Valorian armor, she could pass for the guard she had just killed. At least for a while, Hana felt something cold settle in her chest. This wasn't just combat efficiency. This was something else. Something predatory in a way that went beyond normal military operations. "They're playing with us," she said quietly. "They could have attacked hours ago, but they're taking their time, eliminating sentries one by one, studying the patterns, learning the terrain. They're being thorough," Doyon corrected. "Rushing gets you killed. Patience keeps you alive." On another screen, Hana saw the facility commander finally react. He had noticed that too many guards weren't responding to check-ins. He ordered a status report from all perimeter positions. When several didn't respond, he raised the alert level. Automated defenses activated. Blast doors sealed. The remaining 60 Valorian soldiers inside the facility went to combat stations. Gun turrets emerged from hidden positions. Sensor sweeps intensified. The commander was good, Hana noted. Experienced. He wasn't panicking. He was securing his position, making the facility into a fortress. Any conventional assault would now be suicide. She expected the humans to withdraw. The element of surprise was gone. The defenses were active. Any rational commander would abort the mission. Instead, all 6 human soldiers began moving simultaneously. Hana saw them on her screens, finally visible as they left their hiding positions. They were converging on the facility from different directions, moving fast now, no longer concerned with stealth. "They're attacking," Hana said. This is insane. The facility is sealed and on full alert. Doyan leaned forward slightly, watching the screens with more interest now. This is the part where it gets interesting. The humans didn't approach the main entrance. They didn't attempt to breach the blast doors. Instead, they split up, each one moving toward different points on the facility's perimeter. Points that seemed random to Hana, just arbitrary spots on the structure's exterior. Then she understood. They weren't attacking strong points. They were looking for weak points. Ventilation shafts, drainage systems, service access panels, all the small gaps and openings that existed in any large structure that were too small or too insignificant for the Valorian defenders to worry about. Places where humans, with their smaller frames and flexibility, could fit through. The hunt was becoming an assault. And Hana realized that the humans had never been trying to sneak past the defenses. They had been studying them, learning them, finding every weakness, every gap, every opportunity dot. Now they were going to exploit every single one. Sergeant Minho pressed himself flat against the rocky surface, his breathing slow and controlled. The ventilation shaft was 3 meters above him, a narrow opening barely wide enough for a human to squeeze through. Getting to it meant climbing exposed rock, while automated defense turrets scanned the area every 40 seconds. He had been watching the turret pattern for 20 minutes. Scan left, pause 3 seconds, scan right, pause 3 seconds, return to center. The turret was thorough, but predictable. It gave him a 7-second window between scans, 7 seconds to climb 3 meters of rough stone and slip into the shaft opening dot inside the facility. Alarms were blaring. The Valorian commander knew something was wrong now. The perimeter guards who had failed to check in, the sealed blast doors, the maximum alert status. Everything was locked down tight, except for the small gaps, the overlooked spaces, the maintenance access points that were considered too insignificant to defend. Minho waited for the turret to complete another scan. He counted in his head. The moment the turret swung past, he moved. His hands found holds in the rock. His feet pushed him upward, his body moving with practiced efficiency. No wasted motion. No hesitation. 6 seconds. He reached the ventilation shaft and pulled himself inside, rolling silently into the darkness just as the turret swung back. The automated system detected nothing. The shaft was tight, forcing Minho to crawl on his stomach, pulling himself forward with his elbows. The metal was cold against his skin. His rifle was strapped to his back, knife secured at his hip, demolition charges in his pack. He moved slowly, carefully, making no sound louder than a whisper. The shaft angled downward, following the facility's structure into the canyon wall. Minho could hear sounds now through the metal. Boots on floor panels. Voices speaking in the Valorian language. Alert levels being confirmed. Defensive positions being established. He reached a junction where the shaft split into 3 directions. He chose the leftmost path, following the facility blueprint he had memorized during the mission briefing. This should lead to the barracks section dot behind him. In other parts of the facility, his team was doing the same thing. Ji-Won had found a drainage tunnel barely 40 centimeters wide. She was smaller than Minho, able to fit through spaces that would trap him. Corporal Hyan was working on a service panel near the loading dock, using a simple crowbar to pry it open, while the nearest guard was looking the other way. They had studied this facility for weeks before the mission. Not just the official blueprints, but construction records, maintenance logs, supply deliveries. They knew every pipe, every cable, every air duct. The Valorians had built a fortress. But fortresses were designed to keep out armies, not individual soldiers willing to crawl through spaces most species couldn't even consider. Minho reached a ventilation grate overlooking a barracks room. He could see 12 Valorian soldiers below, suiting up in combat armor, checking weapons, preparing to defend the facility. They were professional, efficient, moving with the confidence of elite troops who knew their equipment and their mission. He studied the room layout. One door, reinforced. Equipment lockers along the left wall. Ceiling support beams running across the space, holding lighting fixtures and environmental systems. The Valorians were clustering near the lockers, accessing ammunition and additional armor plates. INHO carefully unslung his rifle. He had one fragmentation grenade left. He could breach the grate, drop in, engage all 12 targets. Maybe survive if he was very lucky and very fast, or he could wait. The Valorian soldiers finished their preparations. A commander's voice came over their communication system, ordering them to defensive positions in the main corridor. The soldiers acknowledged and began moving toward the door. Minho watched them file out of the barracks. 12 targets reduced to 0 without firing a shot. He waited until the room was empty, then used his knife to quietly pry open the grate. He dropped silently to the floor, crossed to the door, and checked the corridor beyond. Empty for the moment. The Valorians were setting up defensive positions deeper in the facility, expecting an assault from the outside. They weren't looking for enemies already inside. He moved down the corridor, staying close to the wall, his footsteps silent on the metal floor. A Valorian soldier appeared around a corner ahead. Minho froze, pressing into a recessed doorway. The soldier passed within 2 meters of him, eyes focused straight ahead, not checking the shadows. When the soldier was past, Minho continued forward. He needed to reach the facility's core, where the weapons control systems were located. That was the primary objective. Disable the weapons, extract before reinforcements arrived. A sound behind him made Minho turn. The Valorian soldier had stopped, was turning around, had perhaps heard something or sensed movement. His hand was reaching for his weapon. Minho covered the distance between them in 3 quick strides. His hand clamped over the Valorian's mouth before he could shout. His knife found the gap in the armor at the throat. The soldier struggled, strong and well-trained, but Minho had momentum and position. 5 seconds later, the Valorian went still. Minho lowered the body quietly and moved on. He could hear combat now from other sections of the facility. The sharp crack of human rifles, the heavier sound of Valorian plasma weapons. His team was engaging the defenders, drawing attention, creating chaos. He reached a junction where 3 corridors met. According to the blueprint, the central corridor led to the weapons control center. But it would also be the most heavily defended route. Minho looked up. Above him, cable conduits ran along the ceiling, carrying power and data throughout the facility. There was perhaps half a meter of clearance between the conduits and the ceiling panels. He holstered his knife and began climbing. The conduits were sturdy enough to hold his weight if he distributed it carefully. He pulled himself up, wedging his body into the narrow space, and began crawling along the ceiling below him. Valorian soldiers rushed past, responding to combat alerts, never looking up. Why would they? Who would think to check the ceiling? Humans would, because humans had evolved climbing trees to escape predators. They understood 3-dimensional space in ways many other species DIDN T.MINHO reached the weapons control center. Through gaps in the ceiling panels, he could see 6 Valorian technicians working at control stations, coordinating the facility's defensive systems. 4 guards stood watch at the entrances. He couldn't fight 10 enemies at once. Not in an enclosed space where they had cover and clear fields of fire. So he waited. The guards were alert, but focused on the doorways. The technicians were absorbed in their work, managing turrets and sensors and blast doors. None of them were watching the ceiling. MINHO slowly, carefully, removed his remaining fragmentation grenade. He set the timer for 3 seconds. Then he pulled a ceiling panel aside, just wide enough to drop the grenade through. The grenade fell into the center of the room. One of the technicians saw it, shouted a warning, reached to throw it back. It detonated. The shaped fragments were designed to spread horizontally, not vertically. From his position in the ceiling, Minho was above the blast radius. Below, the 6 technicians and 4 guards were caught in the full force of the explosion. Minho dropped through the opening before the smoke cleared. 2 of the guards were still alive, wounded but trying to raise their weapons. He shot them both, controlled bursts, then moved to the control stations. The equipment was damaged, but still functional. He didn't need to understand Valorian systems. He just needed to set the demolition charges in the right places. He pulled the explosives from his pack, placed them on the primary power conduits that fed the weapon systems, set the timers for 60 seconds. Time to leave. He moved back to the corridor, stepping over bodies, his mind already planning the extraction route. The facility would lose weapons capability when the charges detonated, but the structure itself would remain intact. Minimal collateral damage. Objective achieved. A Valorian soldier appeared in the corridor ahead. Then 2 more. Then 5. They saw Minho and opened fire immediately. He dove back into the control room, plasma bolts scorching the air where he had been standing. He was trapped now, outnumbered, with less than 50 seconds before the charges detonated. Outside the facility, G1 had reached her objective from the drainage tunnel. Hyan had breached through the service panel. The team was scattered throughout the structure, each one completing their assigned tasks. Through his earpiece, Minho heard G1's voice. Quiet, calm. Primary objective complete. Exfiltrating now, then Hyan. Secondary charges set. Moving to extraction point. The mission was accomplished. The weapons facility would be offline within minutes. Now they just needed to survive long enough to get out. Minho counted the seconds. 45 left. He checked his ammunition. 1 magazine remaining. 20 rounds. 5 Valorian soldiers in the corridor, more certainly coming. He thought about his options. Fight his way through. Unlikely to succeed. Find another exit. No time. Wait for the explosion and use the chaos to escape. Possible, but risky, or he could do what humans did best. Make the enemy come to him on his terms. He moved back into the control room, positioned himself behind an overturned console that provided good cover, and aimed his rifle at the doorway. Then he waited. The Valorians would come. They had to. This was their facility, their responsibility. They would try to secure the control room, not knowing it was about to explode. 30 seconds. Footsteps in the corridor. Commands being shouted. The Valorians were organizing, preparing to assault the room. 20 seconds. Minho slowed his breathing, centered his aim. His finger rested lightly on the trigger. 10 seconds. The Valorians charged through the doorway, shields active, weapons firing. Minho shot the first one in the leg below his shield. He fell. The second one tripped over him. The third one got a clear shot, but Minho had already moved, rolling to a new position. He fired again, hitting the gap between helmet and chest plate. 5 seconds. The charges detonated. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was precisely placed. The power conduits ruptured, sending electrical feedback through every weapon system in the facility. Turrets went offline. Blast doors lost power. Sensors went dark. In the sudden darkness and chaos, Minho moved. He slipped past the confused Valorian soldiers, through corridors now lit only by emergency lighting. Heading for the extraction point. Behind him, the facility descended into disorder, and 6 human soldiers disappeared into the canyon system like ghosts. Their mission complete. Commander Hana watched the facility descend into chaos on her screens. Emergency lights flickered. Smoke poured from damaged sections. Valorian soldiers rushed through corridors, trying to restore order, trying to find the enemy that had struck from within. The weapon systems were completely offline. Her people had reported the damage. Primary power conduits destroyed. Backup systems failed. The facility that had been an impenetrable fortress 30 minutes ago was now just a hollow shell of metal and stone dot. And somewhere in that chaos, 6 human soldiers were moving. She tracked them on her sensors now. They were no longer hiding, no longer concerned with stealth. They were heading for the extraction point, moving fast through the canyon system. But the Valorian commander wasn't done. Korath was a veteran of 40 campaigns. He had lost the facility, but he still had soldiers. 43 Valorian troops, angry and humiliated, wanting revenge for the violation of their stronghold. Hannah heard his orders over the command channel. Pursue the humans. Engage and eliminate. Show no mercy. This is a mistake, she said quietly. Doyan, sitting beside her, said nothing. He was watching the screens intently now. The Valorian soldiers poured out of the facility, spreading across the canyon system in pursuit. They had superior numbers, superior equipment, superior strength. The humans were tired from infiltration and combat, carrying wounded, low on ammunition by every tactical calculation. The Valorians should win this engagement. Hannah tracked both forces on her displays. The humans were moving in pairs now, spreading out across the terrain, not running directly for the extraction point, taking positions in the canyon system, using the terrain for cover. The Valorians were advancing in standard formation, covering each other, using their sensors to track the human heat signatures. Professional, disciplined, well-trained. Then the killing started. The first Valorian squad, 8 soldiers strong, moved through a narrow canyon passage. The humans had been there before, during their infiltration. They knew this ground, had studied it, had identified every rock that could provide cover, every line of sight, every choke point. 2 human soldiers were positioned on opposite sides of the canyon, elevated on rocky outcroppings, with clear fields of fire down the passage. The Valorian squad entered the kill zone without realizing it. The humans opened fire simultaneously. Not wildly, not in panic. Controlled bursts, 3 rounds per target, aiming for gaps in armor that they had memorized from previous engagements. The Valorians' shields could stop energy weapons. They were less effective against high-velocity metal projectiles. 6 Valorians went down in the first 5 seconds. The remaining 2 activated their shields and tried to return fire. But they were shooting upward at targets they could barely see. While the humans were shooting down at targets outlined against the canyon floor, 10 seconds later, all 8 Valorians were dead or dying. The human soldiers didn't advance to confirm kills. They simply relocated to new positions, moving quickly through paths they had scouted earlier, disappearing into the terrain. Hannah watched this happen 3 more times in 3 different locations. Each time, Valorian squads entered areas where humans had prepared ambush positions. Each time, the Valorians died quickly, unable to effectively return fire, unable to close the distance, unable to do anything but fall. They're not retreating, Hannah said. They're leading the pursuit into prepared positions. This entire canyon system is a trap. Yes, Doyan said simply. Another squad died. Then another. The Valorian commander realized what was happening and ordered his soldiers to pull back, regroup, advance more cautiously. But the damage was done. He had started with 43 soldiers. He was down to 28 now, and the humans still hadn't reached the extraction point. They were still in the canyon system. Still hunting. Hannah pulled up the tactical map and studied it. The humans were herding the Valorian forces. Each ambush, each attack, pushed the survivors in a specific direction, toward narrower passages, toward areas with limited mobility, toward places where superior numbers became a liability instead of an advantage. She saw where it was leading. A box canyon, steep walls on 3 sides, only one entrance. If the Valorians could be driven there, they would be trapped. Your soldiers are turning this into a massacre, Hana said. They could just escape. The extraction point is clear, but they're choosing to keep fighting. Doyan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, they're making sure they won't be followed. If they just run, the Valorians will pursue to the extraction point. Maybe attack the transport. This way, they eliminate the threat completely. This is excessive, disproportionate. This is thorough. On the screen, the Valorian commander led his remaining 28 soldiers through the canyon system. He was moving cautiously now, checking every corner, every shadow. He knew he was being hunted, but knowing didn't save him. The humans had split into 3 pairs again. Each pair was positioned to drive the Valorian force deeper into the terrain, using precision fire to deny certain paths, force the enemy into others. It was like watching predators drive prey toward a cliff. 15 minutes later, the Valorian commander realized he had led his soldiers into the box canyon. The entrance was behind them. The walls were too steep to climb, and there was nowhere to go. He ordered his troops to turn around, to fight their way back out. But the humans were already in position at the canyon entrance, elevated on the rock faces, with perfect fields of fire down into the enclosed space. The Valorian commander did the smart thing then. He activated his external speaker and called out to the humans in Standard Galactic. We surrender. Cease fire. Silence. The humans didn't respond. The commander tried again. This engagement is over. We are defeated. We request terms. More silence. Hana could see the 6 human soldiers on her screens, positioned around the canyon entrance. They didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. Then finally, a voice. Sergeant Mino, speaking in accented but understandable Galactic. Drop your weapons. All of them. Move to the center of the canyon. Sit down with your hands visible. The Valorian commander hesitated. Surrendering weapons meant complete vulnerability. But he was out of options. He gave the order. His soldiers complied, placing their rifles on the ground, removing their sidearms, moving to the center of the box canyon. 20-8 elite Valorian soldiers. Disarmed, sitting in the dirt, surrounded by 6 humans they couldn't see. Minho's voice again. You will remain in this position for 1 hour. After that, you may retrieve your weapons and return to your facility. If anyone moves before the hour is complete, we will resume fire. Do you understand? The commander acknowledged understanding. Hana watched the humans withdraw from their positions, moving quickly now toward the extraction point. The Valorians sat in the canyon, confused, humiliated, but alive. Why did they spare them? Hana asked. They had a perfect kill zone. They could have eliminated all resistance. Doyan considered his answer. Because they didn't need to kill them. The objective was completed. The threat was neutralized. Additional killing would have been wasteful. That's remarkably practical for soldiers who just hunted your people through a canyon system. We're always practical. That's the point. The human soldiers reached their extraction point, a flat area where a transport could land. Hana watched them take defensive positions, covering the landing zone, moving with the same quiet efficiency they had shown throughout the entire operation. One of them was injured. Jiwan, the young soldier who Hana had watched stand motionless for hours. She had taken a plasma burn to her shoulder during the facility assault. The medical human, whose name was Taijin, was treating the wound. Jiwan didn't cry out, didn't complain, just held still while Taijin worked, her rifle still in her other hand. still ready to fight if necessary. The transport arrived 12 minutes later. A simple atmospheric craft, no weapons, minimal armor. It landed quickly, the soldiers boarded, and within 30 seconds, they were airborne and leaving the moon's gravity well. The entire operation, from insertion to extraction, had taken 14 hours. The facility was disabled. 67 Valorian soldiers had been killed or wounded. The 6 human soldiers had completed their objective with 1 casualty. Non-life-threatening. Hana pulled up her combat analysis report. She had to submit something to Valorian High Command, some explanation for what had happened, some tactical lesson that could be learned. But what could she say? That humans fought with a coldness that had nothing to do with hatred or rage. That they moved through combat like technicians performing maintenance. Each kill, just another problem solved. That they could switch from absolute patience to explosive violence and back again without hesitation. She thought about the Valorian soldiers in the Box Canyon. They had been given a choice. Surrender and live, or fight and die. Most species would have chosen to fight, to die with honor, rather than submit. The humans hadn't even cared about their choice. They had simply stated the terms and moved on. No emotion. No investment in whether the Valorians chose honor or survival. That bothered Hana more than anything else. The humans didn't hate the Valorians. Didn't even seem to dislike them particularly. They were just obstacles. Problems to be solved. And when the problem was solved, the humans moved to the next task. She looked at Doyan. Your people frighten me. He met her gaze. I know, we frighten ourselves sometimes. How do you do it? How do you fight like that, and then just go back to being normal? We practice, Doyan said. We're taught from childhood to separate violence from emotion. Violence is a tool, nothing more. We use it when necessary, put it away when it's not. Getting emotional about killing makes you sloppy, makes you hesitate, gets you killed. But you're still people. You still feel. Of course we feel. We just don't let feelings interfere with survival. When the fight is happening, we're calm. When the fight is over, then we feel. We mourn the dead. We celebrate the living. We process what we had to do. Hana turned back to her screens. The human transport was gone now, disappeared into the void. The Valorian soldiers were leaving the Box Canyon, retrieving their weapons, returning to their damaged facility. She began writing her report. And she realized that for the first time in her career, she had no tactical recommendations to offer. Because there was no defense against an enemy who could outweight you, outhunt you, and outthink you while showing no emotion at all. The humans didn't win because they were stronger or better armed. They won because they understood violence in ways other species didn't. They had turned killing into a science, removed all the passion and honor and glory from it, and reduced it to pure efficiency. And that made them the most dangerous opponents in known space. 6 months had passed since the weapons facility operation. Commander Hana stood in a diplomatic conference room on the neutral station, looking out at the void through a wide viewport. The war was over. Not because either side had won completely, but because both sides had agreed that continuing would cost more than any possible victory could be worth. The Galactic Council had mediated the peace talks. The terms were surprisingly favorable to the humans, considering they were the smaller force with less territory and fewer resources. The Valorian Empire had ceded 3 contested systems and agreed to recognize human sovereignty over their colonial holdings. Hana had been reassigned from combat analysis to diplomatic liaison. Her report on the weapons facility operation had been distributed throughout Valorian military command. It had been read by the Emperor himself, and it had changed everything. She heard the door open behind her. She turned to see 3 humans entering the conference room. Sergeant Minho, Private Jiwan, and Corporal Doyan. They were in dress uniforms now, not combat gear. They looked different somehow. Younger, less threatening. But Hannah had seen what they could do. She would never forget. "Commander Hannah," Minho said, offering the human gesture of a handshake. She accepted it, noting the strength in his grip. These hands had killed dozens of her people. Now they were offering peace. "Sergeant Minho," she replied. "Or should I say Lieutenant? I understand you received a promotion." "The promotion is recent," he said, smiling slightly. Still getting used to it. They took seats around the conference table. This was supposed to be a routine meeting, discussing the implementation of various treaty provisions. Joint patrols in disputed space. Exchange of military liaisons. Standard post-war administrative work. But Hannah had requested this meeting for a different reason. "I wanted to ask you something," she said. "Something I've been trying to understand for 6 months." The three humans waited, attentive but relaxed. "During the operation I observed, you had multiple opportunities to kill more of our soldiers. In the box canyon, you could have eliminated all 28 remaining defenders. But you chose not to. Why?" Minho exchanged glances with Jiwan and Doyon. Then he said, "Because we didn't need to." The mission was complete. They were no longer a threat. Additional killing would have been wasteful. "Wasteful," Hannah repeated. "That's an interesting word choice. Not immoral. Not wrong. Wasteful." "All three?" Doyon said quietly. "It would have been all three. But we think about efficiency first. Morality is important, but it's easier to maintain when it aligns with practical considerations." Hannah leaned back in her chair. "I've spent 6 months reviewing every human military engagement in this war. I've studied your tactics, your doctrine, your training methods. And I've realized something. You don't fight the way other species fight." "No," Jiwan said. It was the first time Hannah had heard her speak. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. Nothing like the silent killer Hannah had watched on her screens. "We don't. You fight like predators," Hannah continued. "Every other species in the Galactic Council evolved with natural weapons. Claws, venom, energy projection, armored hides. They fight as individuals who happen to be working together. But humans? You evolved with nothing but your minds and your endurance. You learned to hunt in coordinated groups. You learned to craft weapons. You learned to turn everything in your environment into a tool for killing." Minho nodded slowly. "That's accurate. And you brought those instincts to war. You don't see combat as a contest of honor or courage. You see it as a problem to solve. A hunt complete. You're patient when patience is useful. You're violent when violence is necessary. You switch between the two states without any apparent emotional transition." "We do have emotions," Jiwan said. There was something in her tone that made Hannah look at her more carefully. "We just don't let them control us during combat. That's different from not feeling them." Hannah thought about this. She pulled up a data file on her terminal and displayed it on the conference room screen. It showed casualty statistics from the entire war. In every major engagement, human casualties were significantly lower than Valorian casualties. Even when you were outnumbered. Even when we had superior technology. You lost 3,000 soldiers in this war. We lost 47,000. How is that possible? "We're good at not dying," Doyon said simply. "That's not an answer." Minho leaned forward. "It is, though. Every species we've fought thinks about winning. We think about surviving. We take positions that minimize our exposure. We retreat when the tactical situation turns against us. We don't sacrifice soldiers for symbolic victories or points of honor. Every human life is valuable, so we don't waste them." "But you were willing to die," Hannah said. "I saw it in the operation. When you were trapped in the control room, Sergeant, you didn't surrender. You fought your way out. because surrendering in that situation would have meant interrogation, intelligence compromise, and probably execution anyway, Mingho said. Fighting was the option with the best survival chance. If surrender had been the better option, I would have surrendered. Hannah studied the three humans. They looked so ordinary. Doyan was young, probably not even 30 standard years. Jiwan was smaller than Hannah, would have seemed fragile if Hannah hadn't watched her stand motionless for hours and then kill with perfect precision. Minho was fit, but not exceptionally so. Nothing about him suggested the tactical genius he had displayed in combat. "You scare us," Hannah said quietly. "Your people scare the entire Galactic Council. We've been having meetings, classified discussions. Everyone agrees that we don't want to fight humans again." "Good," Jiwan said. "We don't want to fight you either." "Then why are you so good at it?" The three humans were quiet for a moment. Then Doyan spoke. "My grandfather fought in the unification wars on Earth, before we made contact with other species. Humans fighting humans, nation against nation. It was brutal, terrible. Millions died. He told me something before he passed away. He said we fight well because we're afraid." "Afraid?" Hannah didn't understand. "You showed no fear during combat." "Not afraid of dying," Doyan clarified. "Afraid of failing, of letting down the people who depend on us. Our squad mates, our families, our species. That fear drives us to be thorough, to be prepared, to do whatever is necessary to complete the mission and get everyone home safe." Minho added, "Fear is a survival instinct. Most species are taught to suppress it, to fight through it, to overcome it with courage. We're taught to use it, to let it make us careful and precise and absolutely committed to survival." Hannah thought of her own training. Valorian military doctrine emphasized courage, honor, strength. Warriors who showed fear were considered weak. The idea of using fear as a tactical advantage had never been considered. "There's something else," she said. "Something I noticed in all the combat footage. You're silent, even when injured, even when dying. Why?" "Communication discipline," Minho said. "Sound gives away position. Screaming tells the enemy where you are and that you're hurt. Silence is tactical advantage." "But it's more than that," Hannah pressed. "I've watched soldiers from a dozen species in combat. They shout encouragement to each other. They cry out when hurt. It's natural, instinctive. You suppress those instincts completely." Jiwan spoke again, her voice still quiet. "We're taught that in combat. We're hunters. Predators don't make noise when they hunt. Noise warns the prey. So we practice silence until it becomes automatic. Until staying quiet is easier than screaming." "That level of control is disturbing," Hannah said honestly. "I know," Jiwan replied. "It disturbs us too sometimes. After combat, when we have time to process, we talk about it. We help each other deal with what we had to do. But during the fight, we can't afford to be disturbed. We can't afford to be anything except focused on survival." Hannah pulled up another file. This one showed the peace treaty terms, the territorial concessions, the reparations, the diplomatic agreements. "The Council pressured the Empire to accept these terms," she said. "Terms that are extremely favorable to humanity. Do you know why?" "Because you're afraid of us," Minot said. It wasn't a boast, just a statement of fact. "Yes, because we analyzed the war and realized that it was only going to get worse. You were learning from every engagement, adapting faster than we could adjust our tactics. You were efficient with resources, careful with lives, and absolutely relentless in pursuing objectives. The longer the war continued, the better you would get at killing us." She paused, then continued. "But more than that, We realized that you were willing to pay any cost. Not in lives. You're actually very protective of your soldiers. But in time, in patience, in commitment. You would never give up. Even if we pushed you back to your home system, you would just wait and rebuild and come back. Your persistence hunters applied to warfare. You would just keep coming until we were too exhausted to fight back. That's accurate, Doyon said. So we sued for peace. Because defeating you wasn't impossible, but it would cost more than we could afford. More lives. More resources. More years of war. And at the end of it, you would still be there. Still fighting. Still finding new ways to kill us efficiently. Minho stood and walked to the viewport. He looked out at the stars. My team and I talk about the war sometimes. About the things we did. We have mixed feelings. Pride in completing our missions. Grief for the people who died, both ours and yours. Relief that it's over. He turned back to face Hana. We're good at war because we had to be. Earth is a harsh world. It made us into survivors. But being good at something doesn't mean we enjoy it. We'd rather be explorers, traders, scientists, artists. We'd rather be friends. But you'll always be dangerous, Hana said. Yes, Jiwan said softly. We'll always be dangerous. That's what it means to be human. We carry the capacity for extreme violence. But we also carry the capacity for mercy, for peace, for building instead of destroying. We choose which capacity to use based on the situation. And right now, you choose peace. Right now, we choose peace, Minho confirmed. We hope that choice continues to make sense for everyone involved. Hana stood as well. She approached Minho and offered her hand in the human gesture. He took it. His grip was firm, but not threatening. I'm glad we're not fighting anymore, she said. I don't think I could have continued recommending strategies against an enemy that terrifies me. We were terrified too, Doyon said, joining them. We just didn't show it. The meeting continued for another hour. They discussed practical matters, implementation schedules, coordination protocols. But the important conversation had already happened. Hana had wanted to understand why humans won wars. Now she did. They won because they treated war as a problem to solve rather than a contest to win. They won because they were willing to be patient, to wait for the perfect moment rather than rush into glory. They won because they could compartmentalize violence, using it efficiently without letting it control them. They won because they valued survival above honor, results above recognition. Most of all, they won because they never quit. Even when losing, even when outmatched, they just kept adapting and learning and coming back until the enemy couldn't afford to fight anymore. A week later, Hana submitted her final report to the Galactic Council. It was shorter than her usual analyses. Just 3 paragraphs. She wrote that humanity should be approached with diplomatic respect and cautious friendship. That war with humans was a losing proposition not because they couldn't be defeated in battle, but because they would make victory too expensive to achieve. That their military capabilities would only improve over time as they learned from each conflict. And she wrote that despite their dangerous nature, humans were capable of genuine peace. They could kill with perfect efficiency, then offer surrender terms. They could hunt you through canyons, then walk away when the objective was complete. They possessed the capacity for extreme violence without letting it define them. Her final line was simple. Recommend permanent peace. They are better as friends than as enemies. The council accepted her recommendation. The peace held, and Commander Hana began her new role as liaison to humanity, working with the same soldiers who had once terrified her, finding that away from combat they were thoughtful, kind, and genuinely interested in building something better than war. She never forgot what they were capable of. But she learned to trust them anyway, because humans, for all their capacity for violence, seemed to genuinely prefer peace. They just wanted everyone to know that war remained an option. And if it came to war, they would be very, very good at it.